Hi there, welcome to Hey Sound Guy, the podcast where I will be peeking behind the curtains of the wonderful world of music. Each week I will be speaking to engineers, music professionals and industry professionals, and we will have a little chat and share some stories from the road. But for now, my next guest is a good friend of mine. He's the technical manager for a band called Cymande. He's a musician. He's been in IT and web development for a number of time. He also runs a music publishing company called Soundsbad Music, and it was a lot of fun talking to him. Please welcome my friend Pete Minvalla.
Hi there, T. How you doing?
I'm grand, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Recovering
From a long weekend.
A long flight back from Turkey with Cymande.
Yeah, that was a fun gig.
Anyway, great gig. Yeah, really nice.
Beautiful.
Gig.
Babylon is. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, great staff, great sound, great room, and one of the best audiences I think they've ever had.
Oh yeah, so receptive, and it was. I was. The age of the audience was, you know, they're young people.
Yes,
which is it's a good thing to see them getting into. I mean, but the music is great, so who wouldn't get into it, right?
Yeah, it's interesting how young the audience are, because with Cymande, you know, they're a band from the 70s, a funk band from South London. They got heavily sampled by the hip hop guys in the 80s, which kind of gave them a new lease of life. But now, all this time later, they're still going, and the audience is still young.
Yeah, they're still
getting younger.
Getting younger. That's great. You know, we're getting older and they're getting younger. Brilliant. So, I normally would like to start is if you could, because you know we've known each other for a little while, but if you could just start by saying who you are and what it is that you do and how you kind of came into to doing what it is that you do.
Well, I'm Pete Minvalla. I run a little company called Soundsbad Music Limited, which is really just me. It came about as a sideline, really. I mean, I've been a musician all my life. I've also worked in technology all my life, and they've gradually sort of merged over the years. Where can I start?
Well, maybe if you say you've been a musician and you've been in technology for most of your life. So if we can start sort of when the music bug bit you, what got you into music, and what was the thought pattern behind how you got into music? You know, because everybody's got that thing that, you know, for me, for instance, wanting to play guitar was Angus Young all the way. Yeah. You know, that guy was God for me, and I was like, I want to play like that guy. That's why my first guitar was an SG. Yeah. You know, so everybody's got that that moment where they're like, you know what, this is something that appeals to me. This is something that I want to make my life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my first interest in music was when I was 2 or 3 years old. My mum was into Elvis. My dad was into trad jazz. We had a great big old wooden radiogram, which I was fascinated by. And I used to run up and down the lounge listening to the various 45s and so on that they played, and listening to Radio Luxembourg, just listening to the radio generally. That's sort of sparked my interest. But I think at junior school, when I got to about 9 or 10, we realised that if I was a musician and joined a band, the girls might like us.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's a bit. That's a bit cheesy. But,
oh no, it's hey man, you know, you're a kid. It's, you know, we all, you know, we go through phases and we change, we mature through life. But you know, some of our motivations early on are just basic primal motivations.
Yeah. I mean, you know, apart from loving, wanted to be like Elvis and play the guitar. I had an acoustic guitar. It's just nice to be in a band from an early stage, because you get a little bit more respect from people. It's special.
It is.
There were 4 of us in my first band, or our first band. There's a piano, guitar, a bloke who hit 2 snare drums, and that was it. And another pianist, I think, who did something else, and I can't quite remember. We were called Sound Barrier.
Great.
So that was when we were at primary school. Then I moved out of the area, and me and my oldest mate, Dave Preston. He's a drummer. Well, basically, we both started off doing guitar. When we got to 16, we thought, well, everyone's a lead guitarist these days, so let's do something different. So he switched to drums and I switched to bass. We both sort of grew up with, the heavy rock vibe, but also very much the funk and soul vibe. This is like mid-70s. So we were kind of torn a little bit between the great rock bands, the Deep Purple, Zeppelin, then Thin Lizzy and AC/DC were top of the list. But then also we were starting to listen to some of the funky soul stuff, and there was a Northern Soul disco we used to go to.
So many of those around.
Yeah, and then the funk bit me. I got bitten by the funk when I was about 16, and started experimenting with playing funk bass. I can't even think who I was listening to in those days, but certainly Brothers Johnson were one of the early guys, Louis Johnson bass. And I just got more and more influenced by that side of music. I'm still interested in the other stuff. I love jazz, I love reggae, the whole reggae ska thing. But the funk is the thing that's kind of been in the middle of it all.
Yeah. It's been a central focal point.
Yeah, that's right.
No, that's grand. So 16 playing the bass, and then were you playing in a band even then with your mate?
I've always played in bands or done little bits and pieces with people. I always try and play with other people.
Mm-hmm. It's better than playing with yourself, right?
Yeah, well, most of the time, yeah. The first half decent band, I guess, was when I was about 18. And I'm still playing with some of those guys today, sort of school friends. It was a mixture of, we did one sort of quite rocky set. Then we started doing our very first funk set. And on top of that, we did a Ramones cover act. Ramones. We called it the Maroons.
Okay. Brilliant.
Had a backdrop with that. Maroons written on it.
Brilliant.
I was playing guitar in that with smoke bombs on the stage. Ian Chester, the bass player at the time, he basically was on top of one when it off, so he couldn't see for a couple of numbers. He still kept playing though, so that's good for him. That sort of laugh. And then we formed the band, which we called Funky F and the Super Slappers.
Brilliant name.
Funky F is Neil Etheridge, guitar player. Me on bass. We had another drummer at that time called Rob. But yeah, this is now getting into 80-81 when the Brit jazz funk movement was really kicking off. So we're listening to Central Line, Light of the World, Level 42. And obviously Stanley Clarke from across the pond was a great influence.
What a fantastic player.
Yeah, well, he's one of those sort of players that make you realise that the bass isn't just a bass and what else it can do.
Exactly, yeah.
Which just made it more interesting, and the whole slapping and funk style where you bring in the rhythm into the music as well, which suited our little band because there weren't many of us. None of us could sing particularly well, and that didn't really bother to try. So we tended to have guest musicians coming in to do the odd songs, to play a bit of keyboards. But with the bass, I've tried to sort of... I think Larry Graham started doing the popping style of bass because they didn't have a drummer. His band came from a little family. His band were his family.
Okay. He
grew up in, his family were all musicians, but they didn't have a drummer. So that's where that sort of slapping and popping came in. And it's kind of been a bit like that because I like all that.
Yeah.
And that's just how that little band developed.
Great.
And I've just carried that on basically. I still play guitar. I've picked up a bit of percussion, a bit of one-finger keyboard playing, and MIDI editing.
Great. Yeah. Well, that
production and so on. But
technology has come a long way in terms of MIDI and the quality of it, and also digital audio workstations are they're so good at. I say if you can play anything in and then you can go and fix it afterwards, which is great. It's a bit more difficult when you've got an actual instrument where you got to go pick notes apart. I mean, I know people have done that,
Yeah.
but it's a lot more work.
It's only more recently with like Melodyne, for example, where that's more viable. But I tend to do that with vocal recordings a little bit.
Yeah, Melodyne's such a fantastic
Mainly
piece
with
of
pitch
software.
correction.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Just
But
for that one note that went a bit high.
But going back to my first studio that we put together, I suppose this has been about 80. Well, yeah, sort of mid to late 80s anyway, when MIDI was established, but digital recording wasn't. So we started off with basically, I think we had a chord keyboard with 1.5 seconds of sampling time. So we had to split that down to very tiny little samples, mainly drums. But yeah, so we're still quite reliant on tape for any kind of audio recording.
Yeah.
So what I did, Tascam 4-track, which I've still got somewhere, used one track as a sync track, which would synchronize through a sequencer to have all the MIDI stuff going. So you could effectively record as much as possible in MIDI and then have 3 audio tracks left.
For everything else.
Yeah, so
Would you then go and bounce them down and then just stack tracks?
Tried not to.
Okay.
But just try and make best use of the 3 tracks.
Okay.
Sometimes,
Gotcha.
obviously, you have to. We try to do as much as possible programming in MIDI, and I've still got some of the sound modules here. I've got the RM50 Yamaha, which was a great drum unit that had like half a minute of sampling built in, which is great.
Fantastic.
You could load quite a bit onto the U110. Classic. Well, it's a sample. It's pre-sampled sounds, but they're pretty good.
Nice.
Those are that and an R5 drum machine, an MMT8 sequencer, which I've still got.
Oh, brilliant!
So I've been trying to pull together some old tracks.
Yeah.
Getting the sync code into the digital audio workstation and syncing it all back together. It is possible.
It is, yeah, it is possible, yeah. It's good how we can do that with older recordings. I had, when I was working in the studio, I had to restore some old reel-to-reel tapes.
Yeah.
And I was using iZotope RX7 because there was a lot of tape bleed and things because they weren't stored correctly. So, just to be able to view the waveform in a spectral manner, and to be able to, it's got amplitude and which are more pronounced colors, and then you also have the spectral frequency range from 20 to 20 kilohertz. And you can highlight certain sections and attenuate them down if you get bleed. Like, for instance, this was the majority of it was choir singing, but then somebody's kid had found these tapes and recorded over it. So you'll hear this beautiful choir, and then this wee wee wee, this kid just trying to sing along on the microphone, and then I had to sort of cut that out and edit that out. But just to have the ability to do that with the software, it's
well, Sony Spectral Layers does a similar type of thing, but I think the iZotope tool looks really good.
Yeah, no, they're really good. There was trying to remember his name. There was a fella, South African guy, Mike Wabrow. He worked for my boss before me, and he's recently done a thing where it was a 1940s film, which had the entire score was, I might be wrong, but I think it was a Rachmaninoff score for the entire film. Yeah. And because it was from the 40s, it was all on mono, so all the dialogue and all the orchestral music was all on one track.
Right.
And he said, I watched an interview with him where they discussed the work that he did. It took him about 6 months to clean this thing up, but the results was absolutely fantastic. He managed to completely eliminate all the musical bits so they could perform, because they showed, sorry, the reason why he had to do this is because they showed the film with a live orchestra.
Right. So just need to get the vocal out.
Yeah, got the vocals out and got all the orchestral stuff
Yeah.
and all the score down so the orchestra can then play it live. And he said it took him, he averaged something like 3 seconds of audio in an 8-hour day, which is a... Oh, we just lost audio there.
Hello?
Oh, no. Let's try that again.
1, 2.
Oh, that's annoying. Is that now? Disconnection. Try that again.
2, 1, 2.
There we go. We're back. Hello. Yeah.
Hello.
We're back.
Can you edit
Fantastic.
that out?
Oh, we'll just keep that in there. It's part of the fun. Right. So, you started a studio, and was it mainly for the band stuff that you had the studio?
No, not really.
Or did you have an eye on doing it commercially or doing it professionally?
It was kind of semi-professionally. The band are kind of separate. We're old school mates. We didn't really do. We did a lot of recording back in the day, mainly on cassette decks.
Yeah.
But now this is sort of 89ish time when house music was kicking off. So we were quite into all of that, using the technology to create dance music.
Mm-hmm.
Also did a little bit of work with a Latin ensemble called Bolivar.
All right.
Jose Bata, big up to you if you're out there, and his brother. So using that same MIDI setup, we managed to record about an 8-piece band.
Wow.
We got them to do their stuff in MIDI as much as possible, which sounded okay. Did all the drums in MIDI. And then just a bit judicious use of what's left of the 4-track, putting things in. One little trick we used to do, when mixing down or bouncing, I used to use a VHS recorder in Nicam stereo. Yeah. Because they've said it's equivalent to like 15-bit digital audio in quality. Right.
Fantastic.
There were one or two odd things with it. Sometimes the bass if you had too much low bass, which you tended to, it could actually knock the thing out of sync slightly.
Oh, right.
For some reason. But yeah, generally we used the Nicam. Use it in long play mode. For some reason it seemed to work better for audio.
All right.
So you could put a 4-hour tape in to give you 8 hours of recording. We used to use these for parties, just like pre-mixing loads of dance records.
Wow.
Just so you can not have to DJ too much. Just press play and...
That's it. Play and then enjoy yourself.
Yeah, that's it.
Brilliant. That's awesome. That's great. Yeah. So then you did the record with them on this little 4-track using the VHS. That's fantastic.
Yeah, VHS to master down to through a BBE box. I don't know if you guys have heard of BBE. Sonic Maximizer, but that was my tool of choice. Yeah, every mix went through that. It doesn't add any harmonics to the sound. It doesn't add anything to the sound. It just changes the timing of the higher frequencies, and that's to compensate for a physical phenomenon with every single loudspeaker designed to do with the timing difference between bass and treble. Yeah. That's what the blurb says. But the effect of it is to completely separate and clean up the sound. Okay. It does make it a little brighter, but it's not actually adding high frequency. It's strange how it works.
It just separates using this, it separates the frequencies. Is there?
But it kind of separates the instruments in the mix.
Okay.
Like you listen to something in a properly set up top end hi-fi, and it starts to become 3D. Yeah. It's kind of a bit like that. Okay. With BB. Anyway.
Where they had the surround sound button.
Yeah. Obviously, if you've got a good stereo mix to start with, it helps, but it just clarifies the entire mix. Right. That's the only thing I used at the end of the chain in those days. Mm-hmm. So that was that. I've always had some kind of studio thing going on, but mainly for my own purposes. Yeah. Not really as a commercial thing.
No, okay. Well, I mean, it's what your passion is and what you aim to get out of it. Plus, like you said, you've you've been into the technology and stuff. Did you were you working at the time doing a normal job?
Yes, abnormal job. No, I worked in the finance industry as an IT consultant
Right.
throughout, well, from '84 till the end of the 2000, end of the 19s. So, yeah, till about 2000,
Okay.
which gradually drove me mad. But I did put an album out with a Scottish rapper called MC My Style,
Right.
and my mate Pat on percussion. We had a lot of fun with that one. Yeah, this guy, MC My Style, Scott McDonald, he's brought up in Glasgow, quite difficult circumstances, found himself living in London, and eventually fostered by a Jamaican family.
All right.
So he knows how to rap, he knows how to toast, he understands all of that culture. He's hard as nails, I would add, and he's a laugh. And so we had a little project called My Style Development. You can find it on the various channels, because there's some stuff out there. My Style Development. That was a lot of fun, and the technology was moving along with it. As I say, I was working in the finance industry, there's some good people there, but I had enough of that by 1999. So I moved to...
Yeah, you weren't into the Y2K, you were like, that's it now.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I thought I've come across web technologies from 1995. I thought, well, IT's a bit boring. This web stuff looks quite interesting. Gotcha. So I got a job with a new media company called the I Group. And my client that I was working with was Sanctuary Records, basically. Right. And we did the first ever digital downloads.
All right.
Through a company called Intertrust, which is basically a digital wallet, trying to get payment for downloads. It's a bit clunky, but it's an interesting thing. And we had a streaming service, so we were doing streaming in 2000. Unfortunately, the company, like a lot of .com companies, it was owned by Computer Center, and they never understood what it was, and they never couldn't understand why it's costing them so much money.
Right.
So it was kind of reduced to a bare minimum. But I ended up working for Sanctuary Records on the back of that.
Great.
In the new media team eventually. Also continued the IT skills, so I was like their database administrator. And they were the largest UK independent, with 800 people at one point.
Wow.
So they have Castle Communications, they had a load of rock stuff, and also they owned Trojan Records, which was excellent to get involved with all the reggae stuff. Did a lot of work with them. And that's when we came across Cymande, who I now work with, and T's been sound engineer. Check Cymande out. They're a
fantastic band.
Yeah.
Yeah, the music is great. It just moves you. Yeah.
They're old guys, but their spirit is just carried forward, and they're still touring.
Mm-hmm.
Not all the original members are present, but the two main guys, Patrick Patterson, Steve Scipio, they're still heading it up.
Hasn't Derek been there from
Derek
the beginning
Gibbs
as
is the original member, as is Pablo Gonzalez, percussionist. So I was brought in initially just to do audio-visual recording for their comeback gigs, which started in 2014. But they noticed I was quite handy with the stage and just general arrangements. So as a punishment, they invited me to be production manager, which I accepted.
That's right.
Still have a bit of video and audio running, but the focus is a bit more now. It's a lot of arranging to do. They're a 9-piece band. Yeah. Getting them around. Some of them are getting on a little bit.
Yeah, as you do.
So they've got to be looked after. But that's been a great experience. I've done about 50 odd gigs with them now.
That's great. Yeah, no, it's a good vibe. I really I feel honored to be to be part of the team. It's kind of it came along at a time where I was going through a bit of a transition, and it was the the break I think that I needed, and I'll forever be thankful to you for inviting me on.
Thank you for you. Basically, T was when the band played at Ronnie Scott's. It's probably 2018, wasn't it? When we
Was. They were playing in February. They had a gig, but you came to another gig in January, and then you came up to me, and you said, "I like what you're doing. Can you do Cymande in February?"
No, that's not what happened, mate.
No?
No.
Am I remembering it wrong?
I did see you there at another time, but
Was it maybe earlier than that? Because
Yeah.
I remember you coming to say, "Can you be on the Cymande gig? Can you arrange it so
Let
you're
me
on the
think,
Cymande
let me
gig in
think.
February?"
do you know what it was? They played there in 2017 as well.
Mhm.
Basically, Cymande's sound engineer, he couldn't do it for a while. Well, he had health problems. So you were assigned. It just happened to be the in-house engineer for the gig. I think, that was probably the 2018.
Yeah, it's been.
And I said to him, do you work here? No, I'm freelance. That's interesting because I like what you've done here.
All right.
And I got
yes.
you to meet the band.
That's
meet
right.
Patrick and Steve
Yes.
backstage. It's for this year's February gig.
Right.
That I think can you arrange to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've bumped into him several times because I'm often down there.
It's a good place to meet good people.
It certainly is.
And listen to great music as well.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's another very.
And a Ronnie's burger that goes down well.
That it does, yeah. Bacon and cheese all the way. Yeah, lovely. So, you have a company called Soundsbad Music. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, essentially, I put it together as a publishing company in 2002 just to protect my own stuff. But that was after I'd been made redundant from the I Group, and I was doing a lot of contract work for Sanctuary. And at the same time, I was starting my own little consultancy, basically doing web hosting. It's been like an intermediary looking after people's websites and so on. So it just became really a vehicle for doing lots of bits and pieces through a limited company. But I still focus mainly on music, and film, music and film, sort of general entertainment industry clients. I still do gig filming. Take 3 HD cameras, take the Tascam 4-track, just like what we're recording on now. Use one.
They're so handy, these things.
And
the sound quality is great.
Yeah, reliable. So you've got two inputs, line inputs, and 2 mics. So I take that to gigs, take a feed off the desk and the mics together. Then I can balance those off each other. Not forgetting to sync them because of the time difference.
Absolutely.
Speed of sound.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So, find a convenient point to sync them up together. And then sync up the 3 cameras. I don't use time codes. I don't use any of that because the quality of the clocks within equipment these days is sufficiently accurate that they don't drift.
Yeah.
So I just line them up by the audio tracks.
Mm-hmm.
So I do the Tascam audio tracks first, freeze them. I use Sony Vegas software just out of interest.
Yeah.
I've always been PC based. And then just lay up the
Videos
cameras.
on top. Yeah. I do the same when I do the editing for this. Like I said, unfortunately, these cameras, they do it in bursts. They don't do one continuous. Or maybe I'm just stupid. And
mine, basically, they've got a 4 gigabyte file limit.
Okay.
That's the problem I've got with mine. And when it switches to a new file, you do actually lose about 2 or 3 frames.
Yeah. I've got the same but luckily, because normally I've got the 3 cameras, there's overlap where I can cut to this or to that in that few frames that they start afresh.
Yeah.
But I do because I'll normally record it into Pro Tools. For this one, I'll still pull it into Pro Tools, the audio file, and then start layering the videos up. I use Premiere Pro, basically just when I started this thing, I was like, well, I'm going to do video. I'm going to need some video editing software, and I just went with the top
Standard,
one.
yeah.
And I went and I had to learn all that from scratch, which was fun.
Yeah.
Gradually getting a little bit faster and better, learning all the shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts, which makes a world of difference. I always try and encourage, when I was teaching at BIM, I was teaching music production for performers. So I was teaching them Pro Tools and Logic, so they can. It was a second-year degree student, so they kind of had a vague idea, but the whole point of the module was so that they would be able to record and produce their music to a standard that they can then present it to somebody to take it further. You understand? And then if they wanted, there were a few of my students who were, they were right on it, and they had a bit more advanced skills, but I always try and make the point of spend a little bit of time and get used to keyboard shortcuts, because it's going to cut the time in half at least. Than having to mouse over and click and select and then go back and cut and then click and select for the, select key. And if you've got you don't have to know all of them, because all of these, software, whether it be Pro Tools, Logic, Premiere Pro, Sony Vegas, they all have hundreds of keyboard shortcuts. And you don't necessarily use all of them every day. But if you've got the basic ones down that can just sort of, cut and paste, these sorts of things. Some of them are obviously universal. Command C would be a copy. Whereas, but
Control
in video it's a bit different. C would be cut. Oh yeah, saving.
Are you a Control S man? I am.
Yeah. Oh yes, absolutely. Religiously, every 4 or 5 minutes, I'm just like, it's like a little thing. Just get it saved. Because even when you do have auto backup on, sometimes you can, you
lose stuff.
You lose a few minutes,
yeah,
and that can be, a crucial time, especially if you're on a deadline.
So you use Premiere Pro.
Yes.
What sort of things cause it to crash? I'm just interested, because I've always stayed with the PC platform.
I've been very fortunate in that I haven't had many crashes or any really whilst I was working. The problem would come in if once I import the files, it's got its own encoding software, which then automatically opens up and it encodes these videos into a format that Premiere Pro can then use. And if you start working on things before it's ingested with the encoder, then it's hold on a second. Plus, I think maybe if I get a more powerful computer, I would not have these problems. But because I'm on a 2013 MacBook Pro, it's good for what it is.
But I think SSD drives
I've got an SSD as my operating for my operating drive. I've got a 2 terabyte hard drive, which was the primary, which I took out the super drive and put it in the caddy, and it's now in the place with the super drive. So it's got the 2 hard drives. And then I've got an external which I back things up onto. Backing up is also very important, as you said. If it's not in 3 places, then it doesn't exist. Which is that
comes from the IT world, I tell you.
It's a very, very useful tip, and it's something that, because technology's come a long way, and a hard drive is now a lot smaller in size, but the capacity of it is a lot bigger. So these things go into nanometers and picometers, and it's so tiny. And they do break. It happens.
Yeah. SSDs go wrong, as everything can go wrong.
They all. If you think you can get a 512 gigabyte MicroSD card, how can you store all that stuff on there? It's incredible. But these things, they do go wrong sometimes. And if you lose something, I was talking to one of my colleagues at Ronnie's the other day, and he was telling a story of when we were just talking about the importance of saving, because our boss Miles, he said that he had been on session and they'd been doing some editing, and for the first time ever, because he runs an isolated audio workstation where the computer doesn't go on the internet ever, it doesn't do its updates. He gets a working version and he isolates it, and that's it, and that's all it does. And for the first time in something like 5 or 7 years, it had crashed. And he had the auto backup on, but he'd lost about 3 minutes of work. And then my other colleague Steve was saying when a friend of his was doing a recording for a band, and it was a 6-hour session, and he hadn't had auto backup on, and something had happened. The computer, the spinning wheel of doom went on, and he'd lost all that work.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can only imagine the icy feeling that you get from that.
I know it.
And having to then tell the band, guys, all of this was for nothing.
When Cymande did the American tour in 2016, they went to KCRW, which is in Santa Monica, which is it's a university located radio station. They're great. They did 4 sessions. It was all done multi-track. They had cameras there, the lot. Yeah. Got to the end of it, and for 3 of the 4 tracks on playback, there was no keyboards recorded.
Oh, no.
Although that you could hear them during the session, and everyone was trying to blame everyone else. They tried to blame Lyndall.
Oh, wow.
And he wasn't even on the desk.
Right.
You know what I mean? It all got horrible. So we had to negotiate with them to go back, get the same equipment back off the hire company, the keyboards,
and
overdub it a couple of days later. But they didn't want to do it, and they're blaming us. And how can you blame us? You know. I think we just reached the limit of the number of inputs of the Yamaha desk.
Oh, right.
So I think it's a 24 track, and they were using a couple of extras for there's 2 stereo tracks for the keyboards. Whatever. Nobody knows quite what happened. The engineer at the time, he sort of said, "Thanks, mate, for getting that back." And so we probably won't know what caused that.
Right.
And he said, "The electrons know." It's California.
Of course, there's always a ghost in the machine.
Yeah.
It's funny how that happens. I think I was discussing this with a friend of mine, Matt, where I still get nervous before gigs that I care about, because I care about it, and because I know that regardless of whether or not you had a successful sound check or whatever, there's always something that can go wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's the factor for me that keeps me just a little bit on my toes.
Yeah.
But I embrace that, it keeps me on my toes, like I said before, and it just makes sure that you're aware of what's going on. You're not too relaxed, because I think
don't get complacent.
If I get to a place where I'm too complacent, maybe it's time for me to switch jobs. Then I just don't care enough, or so I do embrace the butterflies a little bit. And once the first or the second song is done and everything's, then that settles down, and then you can
I feel exactly the same.
Get into it.
And Cymande playing.
I think, but I think it's definitely a factor of how much you care about the gig as well. I mean, sometimes, like when I do, for instance, a support band, I've done my sound check with the main band, and then we very rarely do we get any kind of sound check with a support band. And not that I don't care about the gig, because I treat every single gig as an audition for my job. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I like that.
Every day I'm auditioning for my job, because in this way I keep my own standard to a level where I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
Because that it might sound really selfish, but for me it's a matter of pride and honor and integrity, that I want to bring my A game, because these guys, they're already there. They've got their A game. They've got their things nailed down and everything. And if I'm the weak,
Sometimes, yeah.
if I'm the weak link
Yeah.
in the chain, I don't. I mean, I don't let that go. Personally, I don't let that go. I will be torturing myself with that for a long time to come.
Yeah.
So to avoid that, and because I know myself, to avoid that, I always want to bring my A game, and I always so I'm always going to be slightly nervous about these things.
Yeah.
But when you get to things which are, I mean, I'm trying to not trying to downplay or make them less important or anything, but by the time the support band comes along, then I've done the sound check for the main band. That's the one that I'm sort of maybe got a few butterflies over, and I can spend less of my bandwidth on this, even though I'm gonna be
Still
there and
do a
I'm gonna
good
be
job,
present. But it's not the same kind of nerves. It's not the same
Pressure.
level of pressure. Yeah. And if something goes wrong there, it's much more forgiving because you didn't have a sound check.
Yeah.
And I'm not one to go and point fingers and point blame. If I fuck something up, that's me.
Yeah.
I own up to that, and I don't think very many people do that.
Some people don't.
a lot of tends to be a lot of finger pointing,
Deflection,
and I think it's pointless really, because it just creates a back and forth that creates some animosity, and it stops you from getting the job done.
Yeah.
Where you could have just said, you know what, and sometimes even if it isn't your fault, you can say, right, I'll take that. It's me.
Yeah. We'll see what we can do about
Let's
it.
move on. Let's move on. So
it has been quite a struggle with Cymande, because they've been off the road for quite a long time. Some of them haven't played, some have. And they're, any 9-piece band, there's always going to be a few issues.
Something might go wrong. Yeah.
The guys have been using wireless for guitar and bass. Sometimes it works fine, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Funny enough, at Ronnie Scott's is one of those times
It didn't work.
some kind of interference came in on the guitar.
With the theatres.
Yeah, it could be fine during the sound check. It was the last gig, but we had to dump the wireless halfway through one of the sets, didn't we?
Yeah.
And go wire, because I think Ronnie had sent some spell down saying, no, you shouldn't be using that technology, mate.
Yeah. It's funny, the tremors of those who have played in there.
God, man.
I've certainly felt it. Good friend of mine used to be the house drummer, Chris Dagley. He had a motorcycle accident and died suddenly. It was I was hanging out with him that night, and then the next day I just heard the news, and it was sudden and sad. And I've sort of felt him in there a few times. The presence and the
vibe in that place is nothing like it.
Yeah,
Nothing
no,
like it
it is great. It's kind of like people say, if these walls could talk, and I think in that place the walls do talk.
Oh yeah,
They definitely give off the vibration of the people that have gone through there. The energy that's stored in there. It's quite.
I think that. Did you know the original Ronnie's has now got the blue plaque over the door
in Gerard Street?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh right, I didn't know that.
There was a presentation
Yes, somebody.
a little while ago.
That's correct. Yep.
I was going to get down, but it's pouring with rain.
Yeah, you don't want to stand outside in the rain. It's not worth it. You can go and see the plaque next time.
Yeah, that's right.
Next time you go down there. Yeah. No, I mean there's so many great stories about that place. And like I said, I don't get complacent, even though I've been there a long time. I've been there 11 years now. But I still feel a sense of honor and a sense of pride to be part of the team and to be there. And I really do hope. I hope it doesn't. I don't think it will. I hope that never goes away. Because like I said, once the butterflies goes and once the passion goes, then maybe I should go do carpentry or something.
or fruit farming or something.
Oh man, I'd love that. Okay, I grew up on and around farms, and that was kind of always my first choice of occupation. You know, my first choice is to be a farmer. I always wanted to be a farmer, and since I got into sound when I was 16, and once that bit, I was like, okay, if my first option isn't available, I'll definitely do sound.
Well, I wanted to be a male model, but obviously that wasn't going to work.
Oh, that's no good.
Female maybe, but not male.
Oh, well, you know, I definitely blame the agents for that.
Yeah.
They didn't see your potential.
No.
That's brilliant. Great, man. So, have we got any fun gigs coming up? Have you got anything that's coming up? That's
well, my own band is having doing a little private gig.
Great.
Out in Swindon Way.
Lovely.
So in fact, it's a rehearsal in the morning and a gig in the afternoon in the same place. So that's handy.
Awesome.
We're certainly going to need rehearsal.
Okay, it's been a while, is it?
We did have a little bash the other day in the drummer's garage. But,
It's so much fun playing with other people, man.
Particularly old mates, so we can have a laugh. And, we have got another guitarist, another old schoolmate, join us, who's actually bloody good.
Great. Well, your mate Donnie did really well.
Donald Gamble, he's sat in for Pablo.
He's a lovely gentleman as well. You know,
he's funny
just
guy.
fun. Yeah, good banter. It's it's nice. The camaraderie on the road is a special thing. It really is.
Yeah.
And you know, we all, you know, there's ups and there's downs, but as long as there's the camaraderie within the band, you know, you can get through pretty much anything. You know,
Cymande, I've toured with them for quite a while now, and when they get going, they are hilarious.
Yeah,
it's the old stories.
In the dressing room after the gig was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
you know,
I've learnt a lot of new Jamaican words.
Oh, have you now?
In the last few years, I don't know what half of them mean, but I've learnt some new ones.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's sometimes hard to understand, even though you're like, are you guys speaking English? Yes, you are. Right. It's brilliant. No, it's a lot of fun.
They're great.
So when is this gig? But you say it's a private gig.
It is, yeah.
So
I think we will be
go.
doing some next year. The Super Slappers, Funky F and the Super Slappers.
Oh right, it's this band that's going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
have you got a website for them or where people can?
No, of course not.
No. Is there a social media account or something going on?
Not as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
I've got a domain name if that's any good, with nothing on it.
Okay. Well, people would just get in contact with you then.
We will. We are. I mean, to be honest, we've only really got back together. I think the last gig was 2 years ago. Before that, it was 15 years.
Okay.
Before that.
All right.
But you know, we've got potential to actually make it a little bit better. So as soon as we're ready.
Yeah. Why not, man? It's I kind of with playing music, like I said in the beginning, when I got into playing guitar, I was like, I want to be a rock and roll star. I want to, have a band. I want to, as you have these grand aspirations and all these things. And as I kind of generally got older a little bit, I got into I was never going to be that guy. I was never that good. You understand? I'm okay. I practiced a lot, but I realized that the amount of time that I was going to have to put into it to get to, because after it sort of progressed from wanting to be Angus Young to wanting to be Steve Vai, and when I set my sights on that, and I had work and life commitments and all these things, I didn't have the time to put in that time, and I kind of came to the realization that for me personally, music is something that's always going to be with me, and I can always go and sit down, grab my guitar when inspiration strikes, write a song. I get really excited about it, record it, get it in, and then I'll have that there for me. And then I can go and do the other things that I'm passionate about.
Because it's such good therapy.
It is.
To play music
is just.
They say that when you listen to music, about at least half of the brain functions are active in your brain. When you're creating music, 90% of your brain is active.
Right. Yeah.
Of the functional aspects.
Yeah. All the synapses are firing.
The artistic, the mathematics, because of the bias.
100%.
All of these different functions, so it's good therapy.
Yeah, I guess, and if you're a drummer, then it's 110%, right? Because you got to have 4 brains, controlling each
one
limb.
in each limb.
Yeah.
I was filming Sam Kelly with Cymande,
Yeah.
their original drummer,
Mm.
and a camera on his leg, on the lower half.
Yep.
And I told him that. I said, I've got a camera on your feet today. Oh, it's good. I always wondered what that half was doing, he says.
That's brilliant. Oh, great! Yeah, just some people are just natural. I've tried playing drums a little bit. Had an electric kit, and my yeah,
It takes practice.
it takes a lot of practice.
Well, I did actually learn drums on the side. Well, my mate Dave, back in the day, he went to drums. I learnt a little bit with him, and I actually sat in during a Cymande sound check once and did a couple of numbers.
Nice.
So I've played with Cymande.
Fantastic. That's amazing.
They gave me 9 out of 10 for effort, not
Of
necessarily
course.
quality, but
Hey, man, you got a mark.
yeah,
You got a good mark, and you got the respect.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. No, music is again, it really depends on what you want from it, and you got to make that decision, and then dedicate yourself towards that. But if you've got, like for me, funny this morning, because I bought some meat, I'm gonna make biltong, and I like to do loads of different things. I make my own sausages, and I bake cakes, and I do all these sorts of things, and. My daughter was asking something about, are you going to become a butcher now or something? I said, no, I like to be kind of like a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah,
It's
I know
not,
what you mean.
I'm not the best knife in the tools, in that there is, but, it cuts things and does. But then I've also got a tweezer, and I've also got a scissors, and I like to have.
Jack of all trades and
That's
master
it.
of some. That's
Yeah,
what I like to look at it.
yeah,
a
no,
bit like that.
100%. But that's me personally. I think, and like I said, music can be with you forever. When I was younger, I played rugby, and I especially in high school, I played rugby, and I was all right. I didn't quite get the break, but even that, professional sports. It has a shelf life. It's got a limit of where you can, especially with rugby, because it's such a physical sport.
Yeah. My dad used to be
you can only play up until a certain age. Whereas other sports like tennis and golf, you can obviously keep playing those things because it's not as physically
golf,
taxing on your body. But my sport was rugby. But with the thing about music is I can play that until I use my guitar as a cane. And then I can still do that until.
Did you see that
long
gig
as I
of
got
Leo Fender playing on? I think it's his 100th birthday, wasn't it? He's still managing to play. Well, that says it all.
Yeah, man. It can always be with you.
And a lot of people say, "Oh, do you think it's too late for me to start learning an instrument?" I said, "Never too late, mate."
Never ever.
Bloke in the post office down the road. He said, "Oh, I used to play a tabla." He goes, "I used to play a banjo." Asian guy. I thought, that's strange, but
I hate the term when somebody say "I used to."
Yeah.
You play the instrument, whatever it is, or you sing. You can be out of practice, but
you've achieved a certain level, which is it's yours, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's yours to keep.
Unless unless you've consciously made a decision, I'm never going to do this again. Then you can say I used to.
Yeah.
And like I say, I used to play rugby because I'm not going to start now at 36 playing rugby again. No. I probably won't walk for a week.
When you think about it, music's taught at school, so everyone, you could argue, still plays music. Using that argument.
True. Yeah, they've got it. But I mean, it's one of the biggest things that that we did around the campfires, probably before we even had language. It's such a part of our being. Your heartbeat beats at. There's always rhythm. There's always tempo. There's always something going on. The amount of times you blink your eyes, and it's such a part of who we are. So and there's very few people that you find that they're like, oh, I don't like any music. I can't stand it. But apart from that, most of people will get into it. Everybody's got their thing. Everybody's got their own thing. But when there's a rhythm and a melody involved, people you feel it, and it's such a magical word.
Respect me, people. What I've got a lot of respect for is you ask somebody what do you like, what sort of music do you like, said, I like what I like. I think that's brilliant.
Okay.
I don't need to know what it is or who played what on where. If it sounds good, I like it. And that's great.
All right. That's fair enough. Don't get...
You don't have to be an expert in it.
And I think I'm kind of sometimes guilty of that, where I'm like, I'll have my genre, which is everybody's got a genre which they prefer.
Yeah.
Since I started working at Ronnie's, I've definitely broadened my horizons quite a lot. Because growing up, I was a rock and roll guy and heavy metal, and that was it. Everything else sucked, But as kids, as we are, I was never so much of a jazz fan, because I think maybe I didn't know or understand it well enough.
Yeah.
And through the years of working at Ronnie's, I've developed an understanding and a taste for it.
Yeah, appreciation.
Because I understand it now a little bit more. And I think, like I said, I'm sometimes guilty of, I definitely stay away from rap and hip-hop and stuff like that, because it's really not my thing. But just brushing over it all and say it's all shit, I think is something that I've definitely been working on.
Good.
To not just dismiss it.
Just because you don't understand it, you can't. You can't really judge it, can you?
Absolutely, and but like you say, you like what you like, and if doesn't matter what it is, if you can keep that open mind, doesn't matter what the music is, but if you feel it, if you feel a stirring, and you like it, then that's a good way to go about it.
Yeah,
it's a more.
Don't worry about what genre it is.
Yeah, just it's music, and so I very much like that. That's I'll take that on board, and I think maybe we'll end this there on a high note.
Fantastic.
Thank you, man. I really do appreciate you taking the time.
Good talking to you again, T.
Yeah, man. It's always
seeing
a
you
pleasure.
very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, and until next time. Now, we hope you've all enjoyed that very much. I had a lot of fun talking to Pete, and hopefully we can get him on again sometime in the future. But as always, if you like what you see, like, subscribe, share, do whatever you want. Thank you very much, and until next time.